قتلت أهالينا في القدس في القدس.
هم شباب سرايا القدس المظفرة يدخلون.
قتلت أهالينا في القدس في القدس يا حيوان في القدس. يو قيمة لي إنه بيصير في الدورة يو قيمة لي. الله أكبر.
C'est pas toi! C'est pas toi!
طبعا الان اخواننا في السرايا يا اخوان وكتائب القسام، جندي جوا القلبة يا شباب، جندي جوا القلبة بدهم يفجروها يا شباب.
On the morning of the 7th of October at about 8:15 a.m., disguised in uniformed Nukma terrorists entered into this Nova festival site. And as they began to approach, as they began to wreak havoc locally, a group of festival goers who had not already been able to escape found shelter in this yellow dumpster behind me. And they would stay in this yellow dumpster from about 8:15 till 11:47 completely undetected. They heard, and we know this as they were messaging family and friends throughout, the gunfire, screams for help, people pleading for their lives, people being dragged off. God knows the horrors of what they experienced as they sought to disguise themselves and cover themselves with the garbage that was inside. At 11:47 a.m., a lone terrorist entered the garbage dump and began to fire indiscriminately, killing a great number of those who had taken refuge inside and wounding many others. This is only one of the sites that proliferate what has now become a memorial to the lives of those who were taken on that day, the 7th of October, 2023. You can see there are some here already to pay their respects and to memorialize and commemorate those people who lost their lives in that tragedy. 380 were slaughtered on this ground. We see their pictures, we see memorial rocks, we see almost little gardens that have been laid out to their memory and the site of this, what was the Be'eri forest.
ילדים, זקנים, מה שאתה רק רוצה, הם לא בחלו בכל מה שהיה לו דופק, מבעל חיים ועד לבן אנוש, הם פשוט טפחו, שרפו, קצרו, עם אופנועים, טרקטרונים, רדפו וצלפו, פשוט טפחו בהם. בא רכב, הוא פשוט עשה וידואי הריגה. את ההתאכזרויות, את הדריכה על הגופות, את הוידואי ההריגה, את ההתעללויות בבנות, את ההפשטות של הגופות, את הלקיחה של הגופות מפה, להתעלל בגופות של בחורות, ילדים, משפחות, זה משהו שאי אפשר, זה לא נתפס.
Hi, this is Simon Barrett of Revelation TV in the UK. What you can see behind me is one of the cars that was attacked on October the 7th, the worst mass terrorist attack in Israel's history, where Israel was confronted by approximately 2,000 to 3,000 Hamas terrorists on that day. You can see the carnage they've done with the cars behind me, with these Iranian-supplied grenades that ignite and inflame these cars and actually burn them to ashes. And for those people who really do question whether October the 7th happened, well, here's the crime scene, here's the evidence of the mass murders that took place on October the 7th. And it's a reminder of the world to wake up, to realize this is terrorism. This is the worst kind of terrorism that we've seen in decades, certainly comparable to 9/11. And the magnitude of the destruction that occurred on October the 7th is nothing less than absolutely horrific and evil. And you can see with the evidence behind the total carnage caused by Hamas back on October the 7th. I want to take you back to October the 7th, and you can see behind me how this beautiful black Audi has been absolutely shot to bits by Hamas terrorists, and around us we see the absolute carnage caused by Hamas on October the 7th. This is real, this happened, and you can see car after car after car just parked up here with their windscreens shot to bits, tyres burnt out. It's a scene of absolute carnage and absolute terror, and to be one of those Israeli drivers on October the 7th when Hamas carried out this terrorist attack must have been absolutely horrific. And the world needs to know what happened on October the 7th. This is equivalent of what happened in the Shoah or the Holocaust, to realize the true magnitude of the scale of this attack by Hamas back on October the 7th. As you can see, this was, until recently, a crime scene. This is the biggest crime scene I've ever seen. I'm sure the biggest crime scene that you've ever seen. But I want to show you this car because this just brings to life how personal this is. Because in this car, looks like these were just in Israeli day trippers. They packed their bags for the beach. And then you can see in the back seat is a children's book. And then in the front, personal items with pens, which makes it very, very personal of what happened, that these people did not expect to see what they saw on October the 7th. And it just brings that personal element that these were people, real people, who in one moment their life was just taken. And it describes really what the Bible talks about, is suddenly people are saying peace and safety, and suddenly there is no safety. We can see this with here, this sudden terrorist attack on October the 7th by Hamas, and that these are real people who drove these cars on October the 7th. So what we can see in this car is that these poor people had absolute no chance of survival. Going on a family day out to the beach to the south, and then to be confronted by Hamas terrorists on October the 7th is just beyond horrific. Words can't describe the magnitude of what we're seeing here, the total destruction by Hamas, killing innocent Israeli civilians in their car who had no self-defense, no way of getting out of those situations. And you wonder why Israel is launching a military operation into Gaza to destroy Hamas. Well, it's because of this.
Here in Near Oz, it's estimated that about 180 of 400 residents were either killed or abducted. This community was completely devastated. There's nothing for people to return. The house next door, the husband didn't return, thankfully. His wife and the children were able to be safe in the safe room, and she was able to hold the door fast, keeping the terrorists from entering in. By the time the Israeli army arrived, by the time the IDF arrived here at Near Oz, the terrorists had already gone, and it was too late.
We're here at kibbutz Near Oz, and if you can look through into this house of this kibbutz, the complete devastation caused by Hamas on October the 7th, and you can just imagine the Israeli family living here, completely unaware of the horrors that were going to take place. Here we are inside one of the kibbutzes that was destroyed by Hamas on the 7th of October. Then you can see for yourself the absolute total devastation caused by Hamas. But you have to think, what is in the mindset of these terrorists to actually conduct such an attack on innocent Israeli civilians? The kind of evil magnitude of this is unbelievable, and it reminds me of something looking like Bergen-Belsen after the liberation of the Nazi concentration camp in the Second World War. You can see that this also, you get a sense that this would have been a kind of pogrom committed by the Russians back in the 19th century, all because these people are Jewish and because they want to live rather than the death cult that is Hamas.
On the morning of the 7th of October 2023, just a little bit after 6:30, the town of Sderot was completely infiltrated by a group of terrorists from the Gaza Strip. They came in their trucks and vans and began to slaughter anyone and everyone who was in sight. Their main target being here at this exact spot, the symbol of local authority and justice, the Sderot police station. And in this particular space, 26 of what was believed to be an initial 60 terrorists who had singled out Sderot for their attack would set up in the space behind me in what was then the police station. After intense fighting and after a period of time, on the 8th of October, the police station was destroyed with the terrorists inside. We have a memorial wall here that commemorates that day and that commemorates the lives of those across this city who lost their lives. And I was reminded as I looked at some of the inscriptions on the memorial and to those who lost their lives of the catastrophic loss experienced by the families, particularly the young children who witnessed as their parents were killed. Of course, there were many children on the day, believed to be approximately 36 children who were singled out and killed on the 7th of October. And in some of those situations, absolutely horrifying stories of how their bodies were treated in the aftermath But there were those who survived and who were able to either be overlooked or somehow get to a place of safety prior, and yet the trauma will remain for many of those. As we walk through the names on this memorial wall, what's interesting is to read the diversity of these people, their lives, the ways in which they're remembered and what they're remembered for. And there are Jews here, there are individuals who immigrated after the fall of the USSR in the early 90s. And there's one family, a man over here on the right-hand side who is from what's called an Arab Zionist family, a family of Arabs who loved the land and desired to be in the land. But all of them united by their love for this particular area, despite its challenges, facing routine missile launches since 2001 from Gaza. It's so important that people reflect on and remember the stories of that day, of everyday acts of heroism, and these individuals, many of their stories show how they sought to save lives, how they did succeed in saving lives, how they even put themselves in harm's way so that others could be saved. On the memorial, there's a verse from the Psalms. I cried out in my distress, and the Lord answered me. That's the solution, remains the solution to this day. I know people who deny this happened, or rather that it's not that they deny something happened, but they will say it wasn't Hamas terrorists, it wasn't anyone from Gaza. Mm-hmm. People who say, oh, it was the IDF. The IDF wasn't on site for hours.
No, but we have Hamas body cam footage.
They were sharing.
They were putting it on Telegram and sharing it and rejoicing in it. Days later, they denied they ever did it. And the shocking thing is that the world believed them.
Yeah.
And some of the world continues to believe. But on October 10th, 2023, a couple of days after this horrific attack, we went live as a channel for a very special Middle East report. And it was my job to censor the footage for television. And out of the footage that I'd received, probably only 5% was shown. The toll that it's taken on both presenters and production crew since October 7th it's been a challenge, hasn't it, Reagan, of trying to share the truth of what actually happened.
You know, you're in a situation where this was catastrophically greater in proportion than any of the terror attacks that we have experienced, but because it's Israel and because it relates to the Jewish people and it relates, well, let's just leave it aside. Let's not discuss it. Let's try to cover it up. Let's minimize what happened. Let's try and find a conspiracy. Let's try and find a plot. Let's try and make it all political, when the reality is there are people who lost their lives. They were here not to try and take anything, not to try to invade anywhere, not to try to cause any disruption.
The Jewish people are all about life. You know, this festival was to celebrate peace and life. You know, they have the same l'chaim to life, and they don't want to remember this.
Right, and these were individuals who were largely unarmed. Apart from the security that was on site, there was no ability to defend themselves. They were defenseless civilians who gave their lives.
And I think it's important to remember that that Hamas didn't know Nova Festival was going on. Their plan was to go deeper into Israel.
Yeah. So many Hamas fighters, terrorists did go up as far as Ashkelon. There was an infiltration. It took days to clear. But this was here, and as we saw, there were paragliders that came over. This is easy pickings. You have people who they're tired, they've been having a party, this massive thing. So this became a death trap, and the car lot, which was just over in the distance, became even more such as RPGs. fired, and you see the immense devastation. And even coming in on the roads, you know, a couple of years ago, those roads still had, notice they've been repaved, they still had black marks, they still had charred marks and outlines of where those vehicles had been. We cannot heal the pain of grief. Grief remains, grief will continue, but we do need to put one foot in front of the other, and we do need to continue in our lives seeking to, yes, even honor those who have died by living our lives. Most of all, we need to find that peace that only Christ can bring, that peace which calms the troubled soul. When peace like a river attends all my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, you have taught me to say it is well with my soul. When it is well with our souls, though we grieve, though we weep, as we see throughout Scripture, there's weeping, there's depression, there's grief, there's crying out. Yet we are calmed, yet we find that place where we know of our sure and certain hope. And it's so important that we have that at the forefront of our thinking.
Now, at the time of this particular recording, you know, a couple of weeks back, Starmer, our Prime Minister, announced that by September, the UK could very possibly recognise a Palestinian state.
Right.
Now, when you look at this site, it does feel like we're rewarding those who have committed the atrocities at this very site.
Viewers need to be reminded that there was no security wall. There was no security wall until hundreds of suicide bombings were made and attempted in the land by people from Gaza and from the so-called West Bank. Hundreds of suicide bombings during the Second Intifada. There were no security walls. The security walls were put in not because people wanted to separate or segment the society, but as a necessity to keep Israeli citizens safe. And what we've seen is it has accomplished that by and large, with a plummeting of those attacks. We've not seen the same devastation, and yet then we have the 7th of October, which is the darkest day of modern Israel's history.
Revelation TV has been broadcasting for 23 years. But let me tell you that on October the 7th, 2023, is when Revelation TV came into its main objective, and that was to stand for truth and to set aside all the lies or combat them. I remember talking to Netanyahu in 1999 when I interviewed him for a very short time. He doesn't know this, but what he said to me in return to my questions that I put to him was that it gave me the courage to start a live television, Christian television program. It was something I really didn't want to do, but if it wasn't for what Netanyahu said, that to combat the lies, the web of lies that the Jewish people have had to contend with for millennia, let alone the last 70 or 80 years. And we're, by God's grace, are going to continue to do this. And you know, Revelation TV is, the team is so small, but we are so effective. And everyone is committed to helping to establish the truth about what happened on that awful day. So what happened is our team, as devoted as they are and as small as we are, took the time off and went to Israel and went to those places that you can see where Hamas's army were actually coming in there and taking the lives of innocent people in such horrific ways. And what happened again on October the 7th, 2023 breaks anyone's heart who has a heart. And when I look at the Bibas family, the mother and her 2 children, look at the photo, look at the pictures, look at the video, whatever it is you can see, that broke my heart just the other day when I was looking at this again. Not only did it break my heart, but it made me mixed feelings. I was so cross. I was angry at God. That why did he allow that to happen to such a beautiful family? And there are many families that were affected. So where does Revelation TV and its precious team stand today? as committed as they are to bringing you truth, to bringing you the facts, for bringing you a particular biblical view that we believe is accurate. It's from the Lord himself, who said he was going to stand for his people. He was going to bring them from the four corners of the earth. We know that we still have a tremendous job ahead of us, but by God's grace and by your help and your prayers, we will do our utmost to continue to bring programming to you from these God-given studios. And I just want to thank you all for giving us the time as well, and also giving us your prayers to make this a reality, that history that was written in advance in the scriptures is going to have its total fulfillment, and we, by God's grace, will bring that to you every single day we are allowed to. Thank you.